You're listening to WSTU Stuart.
This is WPSL Port St. Lucie.
The opinions on this program are those of the program host and guest and not necessarily those of WPSL. WPSL does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WPSL. Legal questions? Ask a lawyer. Give us a call at 340-1590, 340-1590 here at the studios of WPSL. And Ask a Lawyer with your host, attorney Stuart M. Address.
Good morning. This is Stuart Address, and this is Ask a Lawyer for January 10th, 2020. We are winding down on our second year here with WPSL, and in a few weeks we'll be beginning our third year. And today we welcome the listeners of WSTU, 1450 AM. We are now being broadcast on both WPSL and WSTU. And no, WSTU wasn't named that because of my name. But
well, go for it. Take credit.
Remember, a couple shows ago, you started using sound effects. That called for a ba-bump-bump.
Yeah. From Palm Bay to the Palm Beaches over the air. And if you have Google Home or Alexa, worldwide. Stuart Worldwide.
Boy, that sounded better than me. You have a good radio voice.
No. Television, please.
All right, you know something? As we were coming into the show, the news was playing, and I hear that Madame Tussauds has removed the wax images of Prince Harry and Duchess Meghan because they're stepping back from their royal duties. I think those two might need a lawyer. Well, actually, they probably need a barrister. Ask a barrister. I can't do an English accent, so it can't be me.
Well, now, if they're moving to Canada, I mean, that's part of Britain.
Well, you know something?
It was.
In a way, it still is part of
still
Britain.
Still a colony.
No. It is an independent nation since sometime, I think, in the 1960s. I remember because I used to always visit there as a kid. But they are still, I think, part of a loose confederation of Great Britain, I guess you call it. I mean, the Queen is still on the money. You know, they still celebrate some of the British holidays.
It's like Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah, I mean, they're an independent nation, but they still are somehow loosely, you know, the Queen has a representative in Canada. So I don't know.
Now it's Prince Harry.
Right. I don't know the inner workings of Canada these days. I don't even know the inner workings of the United States and Washington D.C. So what could I tell you? All righty then. You know, Clif on Swapshop was talking about, you know, you better not call into the show, Swapshop that is, us two, while you're driving. Better pull over.
Yep.
And Cliff said, you know, that little ticket can really add up. And we talked about that precisely last week. It's one of 5 new laws that started January 1st in Florida that we spoke about.
You said it was a few dollars more than the 30.
It's a little bit more than 30. The first ticket, I believe, is 30. But in St. Lucie County and in Pinellas County and other counties, it seemed when you added in all the various court costs, it came to about $1,200. And then there's more. Then you add in the 3 years of insurance surcharges in Florida of about 25%. So that one first little ticket can cost you thousands. It's a pretty good incentive, I think, to think twice.
Wow.
And I will admit it makes me think twice.
Yeah. I don't even look at my phone. It's on the seat.
You know, it's interesting. If you're really serious about this, I don't know about Androids, but then again, the iPhones have a feature where it's do not disturb while driving. You don't even have to do anything. If you hit that setting, it knows when you're driving. I guess technology is really scary these days. I just guess it knows by the movement of the vehicle and the change of the GPS that you're driving.
My Google phone does that. Yeah.
So, you know, if you really want to prevent the desire or the, I don't know, caffeine-needing intent of needing to text somebody, the temptation, I guess, fix a setting on the phone. And then those of you who actually have, Bluetooth and you can get this stuff, through your speaker, that's a great way to make sure you actually use that technology, because you're allowed to talk through your speaker. You just can't hold the phone. And in fact, as we talked about last week, you are allowed to hold the phone and text while you're stopped at a red light. And you can even hold the phone while you're driving. You can talk. You can't text.
Of course, then the police officer will say, I saw them pick up the phone while they're
ultimately, you'll be able to prove whether you were or not. You just go through the history of the phone.
Yeah, well, that's true.
But my point is, you can't even talk on the phone if you're going through a school zone or a work zone. That's part of the new law. You can't use that phone at all except for hands-free.
By the way, thanks to Sheriff Mascara, by Lawnwood Stadium, there is a sign that reflects that of one of the big signs that says no texting, no talking in the school zone.
No looking while you're driving.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's normal.
Drive with your eyes closed.
Yep.
Especially on St. Lucie West Boulevard.
Oh, man.
Near California.
Yes. Oh, boy.
Or for those people who are listening on WSTU on Monterey and Canner.
Yep. Same
pretty,
thing.
Pretty dangerous there, too.
Same thing, yes.
I want to give equal opportunity now that we have some new listeners. All right, so I said last week that since we had started with 5 of the new laws that took effect in Florida on January 1st, we try to get through, briefly, 6 others. We have not quite a baker's dozen, but a baker's top 10. Add one in for good measure. So, as of January 1st, there is a tax relief bill that went into effect in Florida. And that provides a host of tax relief benefits to Floridians. It's what's called a catch-all bill because it contains a lot of different things. It's sort of like the end of the session. We go, gee, what didn't we do? Oh, let's just put it all in and make a stew. No pun intended. So it includes sales tax exemptions for disaster preparedness supplies, like hurricane supplies.
Ooh, that's nice.
That's right. So you don't have to worry about those tax-free days. There's a sales tax exemption now on disaster preparedness supplies. It reduces the tax rates on rental fees, removes a limit on the transfer of homestead property deeds between spouses. And now that's an interesting point, folks. It happens a lot. You own a home before you get married. And you get married and you want the home retitled in the names of both spouses. So what you do is a quitclaim deed to yourself and your new spouse. But you have to record that quitclaim deed, and they charge you transfer taxes. And those taxes can be several hundred, depending upon the value of your home, over $1,000. Now, there's no tax at all on that. So that is a fairly significant savings.
Actually, that's kind of nice.
Unlike the savings that we were promised on the federal tax relief bill, this is a real one. Ba-dum-bum. It decreases the civil penalties for people who are cited for certain non-criminal traffic violations and opt to attend a driver improvement course. So it reduces how much you're going to pay there. And provides exemptions for certain building materials to repair hurricane damage. A benefit there, particularly here in the lovely Florida.
I've got a question for you.
Well, there is a question here on Facebook Live.
Uh-oh, here we go.
Tammy asks, did they pass 21 and over for cigarettes and vape products here? And I'm glad you asked. We did discuss that last week. And it is now 21 and over for cigarettes and vape products, 18 for alcohol. So there's a little incongruence there, but yes, they did pass the smoking and vape bill.
Wait a minute. Back up.
Well,
18?
You weren't this excited last week.
18 for alcohol?
Or is it 21 for alcohol?
I think it's always been 21.
One of the things stayed at 18.
Wow.
I have to go back to my notes, but they did pass that on the on the cigarettes and the vaping, and Tammy's apologizing for missing that last week. Tammy, you don't have to apologize. I'm glad you're listening this week, and I appreciate it.
You bet. Oh, yeah. And okay, so if you want to get hurricane windows now.
Yes.
Okay.
You stomped your hand so loud, it screwed up my Facebook Live
I moved
video.
up your Facebook Live. But
it's showing more on my stomach now, and I don't like that.
If you want to buy hurricane windows now, obviously well before hurricane season, is that tax exempt?
My understanding is, yes, it is. That just like certain things are tax exempt now if you go and buy them, that, I don't know that instantaneously all computers were reprogrammed to properly know that this is exempt. But I guess that now that law's been passed, businesses, just like there's always computer updates and patches, they should be updating to reflect the fact that if you're buying flashlights, there's probably no sales tax on it. Mm-hmm. If you're buying MREs, there shouldn't be any sales tax on it. If you're buying, sandbags or, duct tape, maybe, I don't know. Whatever would fall into that classification, which is a whole nother legal issue, there shouldn't be any sales tax on it. And I guess it's only a matter of time that, computers at businesses will reflect that automatically instead of having to point out to somebody, I'm not supposed to have to pay sales tax on this. Carry the statute with you, folks. But, it happens regularly. I mean, when you go and buy things now that aren't taxable, the computers know it's not taxable. I mean, that's sort of a normal, recognized, everyday thing. So I guess it might take a little time to adjust, but no, there shouldn't be any sales tax on it.
That's cool. Okay.
So another one, hazing. After Florida State University fraternity pledge Andrew Coffey died in a hazing event, House Bill 1080 was created. The new law makes hazing that results in permanent injury a third-degree felony. And the bill outlines immunity to witnesses who call in to report the need for medical assistance for hazing incidents. So actually, I'm trying now to be a lawyer and interpret, because it's a new law. I don't think there are any cases on it. It seems to me that if you're part of a hazing incident, but you get second thoughts when you see somebody's getting hurt and you call in for medical help, you may be immune from prosecution. And I can understand that, actually, because, unless maybe you're the leader or something, but if you're the one that sort of helps get medical care there, as opposed to letting the person, get worse off than they are already, I can see they want to create an incentive. And so that's the incentive that's created. You get an immunity for calling in, the necessity for medical care. And hopefully that, leads continuing to put an end to hazing. I remember in my day, hazing wasn't like it was now. I mean, a lot of things have changed, but a lot of things have changed for the worse. Some things have changed for the better. But
growing up in the 60s.
Hazing was silly stuff.
Yeah, we used to
do
it with
dangerous
our sports
stuff.
teams. Yeah.
I mean, professional athletes, they now have anti-hazing rules, for the NFL. But, they used to make the rookie stand up and sing his alma mater song, or carry everybody's duffel bags or jock straps. I mean, things that were embarrassing, put you in your place, you're a newbie. Honestly, I don't have anything, I don't want to do it if I'm the newbie, but I don't see anything wrong with that. But I guess the hazing line got blurred at some point between fun that was embarrassing, and in some ways actually made the person who's being hazed feel part of the group, and hazing that was dangerous. And I guess when a lot of the colleges and fraternities started with drinking games that led to hospitalizations and deaths, or dares that were very dangerous, a line was crossed, and the necessity for hazing statutes all across the country, and now Florida has one as of January 1st. Next one, police dogs and horses. Are we in the 18th century? We still have horses that we use here in Florida?
Yes.
I mean, I can see if we're in like Oklahoma, but
They have mounted
I guess we
patrols.
still have mounted police. I'm teasing.
Yeah.
I mean, I know they do in Canada.
Did you see the new story last night? Actually, we had it on our radio news as well. Megan McRoberts doing the story for Channel 5 on the brand new flak vests for police dogs.
Did not see that.
That was, and they're good looking vests.
I'm sure the dogs appreciate how good looking they are.
Well, they seem to like them.
As long as they're functional.
Yeah, they seem to like them. Yeah.
Do they have them for horses?
That's a good question.
Okay.
I've never seen anything.
Maybe one of those horses needs to ask a lawyer.
If I was if you're a
Mr.
horse,
Ed.
If you're a horse listening out there, I'd file a lawsuit. You want a flak vest? Oh.
All right, so the police dogs and horses bill. It makes it a felony, up to a third-degree felony, for people who kill or cause great bodily harm to police, fire, or search and rescue dogs or police horses. And the new law makes the amount of potential jail time for offenders longer. They can now face up to 15 years in prison.
Okay, I got a dumb question. Coming from California, it's either a felony or a misdemeanor. What is a third degree?
Okay, you don't understand that? Oh,
no, I don't.
That's really very simple. Even somebody who doesn't do criminal law can answer that one. Misdemeanors and felonies are graded. Third degree, second degree, first degree. Depending upon the level of the misdemeanor or the felony, the amount of potential prison time and fines are different. So, for example, we have first, second, third degree felonies here in Florida. We also have life felonies, where the potential punishment is life in prison. There are capital felonies, where the potential punishment is the death penalty.
Right.
So, we have a grading of misdemeanors and felonies, and that's all it is.
Wouldn't it be far simpler if it was either a felony or a misdemeanor, and that's it?
Okay, that would be a very macro way of dividing whether the potential punishment is less than 1 year in jail or more than 1 year in jail. But wouldn't you rather have a system that further prescribes, depending upon what the offense is, whether you can face 5 years in prison, 10 years in prison, 25 years in prison, life in prison? Because without that, how do you have sentencing guidelines?
I would imagine that's for the judge to figure out.
Well, our society has gone through that. We went through a period of time where the judges had almost absolute discretion on the amount of time to sentence offenders, and we determined as a society that the sentencing was grossly disproportionate, not just on race, but it was disproportionate from judge to judge to judge.
Oh.
And I don't think it's fair that if you commit a burglary, that's your first offense. So let's say people don't have any sympathy for hardened criminals. You commit a burglary, you're 18, it was stupid, nobody got hurt, it was minor. And it's a felony because you took something. I think what the felony limit is, I don't want to guess. It's a felony. You took a little more money value than would it be a misdemeanor. Do you want to get 25 years in jail? That happened in lots of states, particularly the South, particularly if you were African American.
Yeah.
Okay? So the grading of misdemeanors and particularly felonies, and then the further restriction on the judge's authority. So now you have authority between 3 and 7 years for this level of felony. You can't go give the person 20. It's 3 and 7. Gives a little bit more hopeful fairness and parity to sentencing. Now, we have determined, again, studies have shown that still has not solved the disparity on race. African American males in particular, young ones, go to jail for much longer sentences than equivalent crimes committed by white Caucasian males.
Driving while black.
You're not only are you pulled over, but you can go to jail for much longer.
Yep.
So there has been a Dr. Doolittle push me, pull me particularly in Congress over the years, over giving federal judges more sentencing authority, less sentencing authority. Because as a society, I guess, we're struggling to find how can we sort of normalize what punishments can be for certain offenses without making it dependent upon race or gender or age, without giving so much discretion to judges that it's the luck of the draw, but not giving so little discretion to judges that they can't look at a person and say, this was particularly bad, even within this level. And so I'm giving you the maximum, and in some states, and I think Florida is one of them, I'm going over the maximum, but I'm setting forth the reasons clearly in my order so that when it goes up on appeal, one of the requirements is if you're exceeding the maximum, you've got to lay out your reasoning so that it could be examined and questioned.
That makes sense, yeah.
So there is still sometimes, I don't know how much in Florida, because like I say, I'm not a criminal defense attorney. But I know in a lot of states, there are abilities for judges to go above the maximum or below the minimum to what's called deviate from the sentencing guidelines, as long as they make very clear the reasons that they're doing it so that if necessary, if desired, it could be challenged on appeal. So, and that's what we get for talking about police dogs and horses.
Okay.
Thank you, Greg. All right, so now we're going to go into one that's going to sound like a joke, I guess, but it's not really. As of January 1st, 2020, in the 21st century, Florida now has a law on childlike sex dolls. Greg is not saying a word. He's thinking. I see the wheels turning.
No, I'm shocked. What?
Childlike sex dolls. All right, Senate Bill 160 makes it a first-degree misdemeanor. I don't know, something wrong with that there. To sell, give away, or show childlike sex dolls. Subsequent violations will be a third-degree felony.
I knew Tallahassee was a weird town.
Well, in a way, I guess I can understand it. If you're trying to limit pedophiles, maybe it's not such a far leap from using a lifelike, because they make them very lifelike these days, a lifelike sex doll to, trying to say, well, I'm going to go for the real thing. I can sort of understand.
Wow, I didn't think about that.
I can sort of understand the rationale. And beyond that, and I'm not making a value judgment here, I'm just posing a question. Beyond that, as a society, do we want to permit childlike sex dolls to be utilized even in private? I can see the argument for yes, it's a matter of privacy, what you do in your home, what type of sex you have. Remember, there have been laws against sodomy and all sorts of stuff that have had to be repealed or ruled unconstitutional because different states, were regulating sexual activity. Gay sex was against the law for how long? And now there's gay marriage. But so I can understand the argument of, well, you shouldn't be regulating this in the use of your own home. On the other hand, is there a point at which even what you do in your own home should be entitled to regulation by society? And if we're going to make that argument, I'd have to say childlike sex dolls come as close as you get to supporting the rationale for that argument.
Aren't there any First Amendment situations there?
I don't think there's a First Amendment. I mean, first of all, it's not speech. Freedom of expression? I don't know. That maybe, but that's a little bit of a stretch. I would think the closest argument, if we're going to make a legal argument, the closest argument would come from the Fourth Amendment's right to privacy incorporated into the 14th Amendment, equal protection and due process. Forget the due process because that's, being fair, but equal protection. if we had a problem with the government, whether it's federal or state, the government, if we had a problem with the government regulating the type of sex married people can have in their own bedrooms, and that has gone on in the 60s and 70s.
Sure.
Okay? If we have a problem with the government being allowed to regulate that, then doesn't that argument apply here too? Not hurting anybody. It's in the privacy of your own home. On the other hand, which lawyers like to do, and judges like to do it as well, law professors take first-year law students out on a limb until they crash with what's called the Socratic method. On the other hand, having it in your home and using it maybe should be protected. But can you regulate the manufacture and sale of such items? I think you have a much better legal argument prohibiting the manufacture and sale of items that are deemed obscene.
Yeah.
We all know obscenity can be regulated. And we all know the Supreme. I know it when I see it. Very hard to give that definition of obscenity. Even the Supreme Court has a really hard time of giving a definition of obscenity. One famous judge in watching a pornographic movie said, "I know it when I see it," and that's not a great test.
Well, California on going to an extreme on smoking in your home.
Right. Okay.
Where they now are going to outlaw smoking in your own home.
And who's going to enforce that?
Well, that's a good question.
Are the cops going to be peering into your windows to see if you're smoking?
Well, this is like a neighbor complaining about secondhand smoke going through the walls.
I'm sorry. My thought process on that is it's absurd.
Well,
possibly real, but still attenuated. Yeah. I can understand if you're saying we're protecting children in homes who are innocent victims and cannot, speak up for themselves.
They're talking about children with allergies that were complaining because their next door neighbor smoked, and therefore the state legislature now is saying that it's illegal to smoke, or at least this is what they're discussing. Illegal to smoke in your own home.
Okay, I have a problem with the argument about the neighbor. If you're saying you can't smoke in a home in which you have children, I could see that being classified as a form of child abuse.
Okay.
So you're not prohibiting the smoking. You're prohibiting the smoking in the presence of somebody who is too young to be able to object or prevent you, and who is damaging them. So if they can't prevent that damage from occurring, I can understand, again, the legal argument, the theory. Lawyers always have to come up with ideas. So, there isn't always a law on something. Sometimes you have to look at the law and create an argument or a theory, argue that a law should be extended or a new law should be in existence. And I can understand the argument that that's a form of child abuse. I'm not saying I agree, but I can understand that's the first thing that popped into my head, child abuse. And, that's sort of amusing in a way, too, because I met somebody yesterday who there was a little discussion about swatting your kid on the backside. Okay, it was a discussion of me swatting my kid on the backside.
Oh, my mother used to all the time.
And she says, "Oh, no. I come from a place where that's a very regular event. You go to school, you misbehave, the teacher gives you a whooping. You get home, your neighbor gives you a whooping. And then when your mom comes home, your mom gives you a whooping."
That's right.
And where was she from? Jamaica. She says, "We didn't mess around in Jamaica. We taught our kids discipline." And she's a nurse here. What we view here as some forms of child abuse, back in Jamaica, is considered parental discipline.
It's normal.
I can understand her theory. I can understand our theory, and maybe the right thing is somewhere in the middle. I mean, I didn't like it as a kid, but I can understand a whooping that doesn't leave a mark, doesn't cause injury, that sends a message. Now, I know, the American Medical Association, the American Psychological Association, they've all come out and said, hey, it's a form of child abuse. You're injuring the child's self-esteem, self-confidence, who they are. And I understand it if you're talking about it to the extreme. But a swat here and there to get a kid's attention when words are not sufficing, I'm sorry, I still believe that's okay. And my God, I'm a liberal. So I still believe that's okay. And I don't like the idea of government regulating that. Let me rephrase that, as lawyers say in court. I don't like the idea of government regulating that beyond a reasonable extent so that if it really is child abuse, well, yes, absolutely. But my gosh, if I'm in Walmart and particularly a younger kid, a kid's not listening to me, is running all over the place, is knocking things off shelves, and I give him a wallop on the tush and say, shut up, sit down, and behave yourself. If I have to worry that some person who saw that, and this happens, calls the police and I'm arrested for child abuse, that's absurd. I mean, parents have to have a certain amount of discretion in how they obtain behavior that they desire, particularly when it's necessary in the instant. You're out in public, you can't always just run after and yell at your kid or tell your kid what to do. Sometimes they need a shock to the system. And so now we're talking about ask a non-medical professional who's trying to play one on radio. But let's get back to Ask a Lawyer on these regularly scheduled stations. All right, so we've done the sex doll bit. Veterans courts is a new law that went into effect January 1st. And it takes away the requirement that veterans be honorably discharged to be eligible to participate in veterans courts. And it expands the overall eligibility of court-ordered treatment options. So there are courts that for certain offenses, it's sort of like juveniles or diversion courts. If you're a vet, I'm not saying if you murder somebody, but if you're a vet and there are certain types of offenses committed, and I don't know the details about that. And by the way, folks, we're halfway done, a little bit more. 340-1590. Again, that's 340-1590. Call us with your questions on anything. Doesn't have to be New Florida laws. Especially you folks on WSTU. Give me a call. Ask a lawyer. You got a question? You're thinking of being sued? You're thinking of suing somebody? Somebody being a pain in the neck to you and you wonder if you have a claim? Give us a call at 340-1590. That's what I'm here for. Otherwise, I do what lawyers do. I just speak long enough to hear my own voice. Periodically, Greg interrupts, and, otherwise it's a monologue.
Okay.
All right, so the veterans courts, I can understand, some vets are giving the general discharge, what have you, taking away the requirement of an honorable discharge to get certain benefits. I think that's a good idea. I haven't really looked much into this particular bill. I don't know if it applies to dishonorably discharged. I don't know that I would be in favor of certain benefits being given to those who are dishonorably discharged. But conceptually, I think this is a good law. And the last one we'll talk about, and one I just sent a email to my landlord about, my landlord for my office, is as of January 1st, the taxes for a commercial lease dropped from 5.7 to 5.5%. So I want that 0.2% tax benefit on my rent every month. And what is that, probably going to be 37 cents?
Or less than that. Oh,
but it has dropped by 0.2%. And so, landlords that are, as required, adding on tax should be changing that as of January 1st by that amount.
Of course, they just increase a cam, so so they wouldn't.
One way or the other. Isn't that a song or something?
Oh, boy.
I know some of the people who are watching on Facebook Live, they definitely don't want me singing. All right, so now those are basically, it's a rundown of probably 11 of the most significant new laws in Florida, both last week and this week, that went into effect a week ago. There are a lot of them, and sometimes you need to know them, like the texting while driving one, or you can get in a lot of trouble. Anyway, we have Pat on line one. Hello, Pat. How are you?
Hey, pretty good. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. How can I help you?
I just got tired of all the sex talk. I thought I'd throw one out at you and ask you what you thought of Trump taking that bad guy out over in Iran.
Oh, my God. You want to ask a political commentator? You want to ask that question of the wannabe commentator on CNN or MSNBC? Somebody give me a show. They hear me on radio here. Please send me to Washington. All right, what do I think about that? I think he was a bad guy, but we don't go around assassinating all bad guys in the world. There needs to be, a legal reason and a good reason. And from everything I have heard, including some of the Republicans who got the security briefings yesterday, there was no imminent threat. That's a bunch of malarkey, as Joe Biden would say. It was bogus. It was our president having a knee-jerk reaction to a threat, or something that had already happened with the embassy. And if I understand correctly, and, I'm not saying this is gospel, but from everything I have heard, that was an option given to him by his advisors as the worst possible thing you could do to make some of the other things seem more reasonable. And from what I understand, the president chose the worst possible thing you could do, so let's never give him the option for a nuclear weapon. But I don't think it should have happened. And I hear this argument going on, the Democrats are horrible for saying, we're in more danger now. We were safer before we killed him. And I understand the people who are objecting to those statements, because this was a really bad guy who probably really would have done more damage. But if the killing him right now has caused an uptick in Iran believing it has to retaliate, which leads to a possible uptick of us retaliating, and the possibility of a Middle East war, which could be a world war because Soviets, Russian, would have to come in for Iran because they have a relationship. And so now you have the United States and Russia involved on opposite sides in the Middle East. Israel is not just going to sit back and watch things flying around that are really close to them. So I think what he did, unless there was hardcore, unless another 9/11 was imminent, what he did I don't think needed to be done, and I think was dangerous to our national security. What do you think?
Oh, he's off the line.
He's off the line,
yeah,
all right.
Yep.
Well, I hope I satisfactorily gave my opinion and explained it, answered the question. I'm all in favor of preventing terrorism. I'm all in favor of, killing the bad guys. When we heard that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction and he was gassing his own people, I'll admit it, if I was in Congress, I would have voted in favor of the war. And I wouldn't have regretted it today.
Mm-hmm.
Because based upon the information that was provided to me by the executive branch and the president and his advisors, I would have made what I thought was an intelligent decision to authorize the use of force. Later on, it turns out there were no weapons of mass destruction.
The Pentagon was wrong.
And they were really misinterpreting the data to begin with. I would say, no, we shouldn't have done it, but I don't regret my vote for it if I was in Congress. I don't like the people now who say, well, I voted that way and I regret that I did. No, don't regret the dang thing. Stand up and take, responsibility for it. I did what I believe was right. I did what I believe based upon the evidence presented to me at that time. And the fact that we were lied to by the government, doesn't mean that I was wrong for voting for it. As they say, 2020 hindsight in 2020.
Yeah. Well, and the thing that makes this whole Iranian thing interesting is now, of course, you've got the Canadian government up in arms because of the alleged Iranian shoot down of the airline.
I see that, and that's we can go on a slippery slope and blame everything on everybody, but the facts seem to be developing this way, that the airliner was shot down by 2 surface-to-air missiles launched by Iran as part of the battery that was being sent over to the 2 air bases in Iraq, and that the flight was either in the wrong place at the wrong time, or the signature of the flight in the little bit of time that Iran had to launch confused them, and they shot the dang thing down, thinking that maybe it was an American fighter or something, well, who knows? But that's kind of accident killed, 170 plus people?
Oh, yeah.
And those are the accidents that are going to occur when you have reckless behavior. And, God, man, I hate to say something. I know we have a very conservative listenership.
Especially in Martin County now.
Yeah, and I hate to say something that sounds like I'm supporting Iran of all places. But our assassination of one of their top military generals, if you're Iran's government, are you just going to sit on your hands and do nothing? I mean, as a government, you're going to try to assert your own might, protect your own people, your own dignity, and you're going to take some action. And that risks harm to innocent people. And our actions risk harm to innocent people. So the real question becomes, should we have started that? And if we shouldn't have started that, then in some way we bear responsibility for the shoot down of that plane. Not just Iran. Now people can call and try to hang me. But, if Iran wouldn't have been going after those Iraqi air bases where the Americans were, because unless we killed Soleimani, then, we started a course of action, which so far has now led to the shoot down of a passenger jet. And who knows what else may happen. Because one day our president says one thing, the next day he says something else. On the third day he slurs his words. On the fourth day he can't pronounce simple words. Who the heck knows what's going to happen? If I'm the leadership in another country, even one of our allies, and I hear our president say, I believe this is the end, they've made their point, we've made our point, that sounds wonderful. But what are you going to say tomorrow? Because that's the history of this president.
I thought it was interesting that the German prime minister came right out and she said normally she doesn't agree with Trump, but this was a good move.
Really?
I don't know. Yeah, that was a shocker.
I am surprised.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
I was taken back by that. Yeah.
So we are close to war. I mean, it probably won't happen. Hopefully won't happen. But we're certainly much closer to war right now than we were a month ago. And that's regretful. And there's somebody on the line who, I don't know, may be calling to praise me or to kill me. Johnny, on line 1, how are you? Johnny?
Johnny, go ahead.
Johnny? See, what happened was he called, and I knew that he was going to attack me, so I had him taken out.
Johnny, you're there? Come on. Nope.
Johnny, come home.
I guess Johnny
when Johnny comes marching home again, hurrah, hurrah.
He got caught in the delay. Yep.
Maybe he'll call back.
Yep. Yeah.
Somebody's calling back.
Yeah.
Maybe it's my mother.
Under the name of Johnny.
Yeah.
Well, what I thought was very interesting last night was that the Israelis tested their new laser systems to, I guess, shoot down
incoming missiles.
Yeah.
Well, they have the dome, which
Yeah.
works very well.
Yeah.
Not perfect, but very well. And yeah, they're gonna, you're gonna up testing of your own technology, particularly if there's a potential for attack. And that's part of the escalation that worries, particularly in the Middle East.
Okay, let's try John again.
Hey, Johnny, how you doing?
This is John. This is not Johnny. I'm
Oh,
Johnny in Boston.
Johnny's lost in action, but this is John. Okay, John, how you doing?
I'm not the Johnny that just called
I know.
before me. Well, first of all, I wanted to comment on, hitting a child.
Yes.
I had an experience. First of all, there were 5 of us, and we were never hit, never spanked. But I had a friend, and he had three children, and his wife used to slap them all the time, hit them
Right.
across the face and the back, this and that. And one
Face,
day I said
face
to her,
is a bad place to do the hitting.
Oh, yeah.
well, anywhere, because I'll tell you why. You don't want someone that you think loves you to hit you, to hurt you.
That's a very good point, John. It's a very good point.
Yeah, and secondly, it teaches them to do that. Either you're going to love it or hate it. You know what I mean? You're going to carry it on to your children or to your friends or whatever, your schoolmates. I just don't believe in it. I mean, there's ways of disciplining or taking away privileges or whatever. Or I've set an example, I mean, I never wanted to hurt my mother, so I wasn't, a saint, but I tried not to do anything to.
I think you make 2 very good points, and there. Johnny was saying that he came from a family of 5, and they were never hit, they were never spanked, and he believes that doing that damages the child, and teaches them to do that themselves. And I think those are 2 very good points for the argument against spanking your child. But I also do think there are arguments on the other side. Sometimes something else is necessary, it seems to me, to get attention, to get them to truly focus on what you're saying and what you're talking about, or to stop immediate behavior, by redirecting with a simple swat on the butt. And I think that I think that if it's not regularly done, if it's not the regular form of discipline, I can understand doing it so that it is a shock to the system and the child pays attention. But if it is done regularly, then it becomes increasingly less effective, and so probably you increase the spanking or the pressure of the hitting, and now you're getting into risky behavior. So I really do think you make good points, but I don't think it's the entire answer. Maybe for some families, and that's wonderful. If your mother was able to get the 5 of you to be relatively disciplined and obey when necessary, without any physical, touching or spanking, then frankly, I'm very serious. More power to her. I think there are a lot of parents, including myself, who can't quite achieve that.
Her life, her children was her life, and I think it would have hurt her more to be physical with us and hurt us and have us cry.
Yes, and let me tell you something. When I do a SWAT, yes, it does hurt me. It really does. Emotionally, as a parent, it hurts.
Yeah. I want to tell you that my buddy's wife used to hit the children all the time, and I said to her one day, I said, "Did your parents hit you?" She said, "Oh yeah, all the time." I said, "Did you like it?" She said, "No." I said, "Then why are you doing it to your children?" It's not right.
Yeah, and sometimes children do what their parents did. It's they say they never will, but they end up doing it.
I also wanted to touch on the assassination of this general.
Okay.
I'm glad he's gone. Trump said that he didn't have any warning. He got a phone call and knew where he was going to be, and that's all well and good. But if this was he had knowledge in advance, I think he should have gotten Americans out of there first before he did anything like that. and he's doing everything to have his people back him so he can be reelected. We know what he's all about, you know.
I agree with you. There are plenty that don't, but hopefully a majority in the red electoral places will agree come 2020.
Let me ask people that support him 100%. What would we do, or what would you have America do if they came here and killed one of our generals?
That is a very good point.
Sure. I have, you know, Greg told me one time, you have a good point there, but if you wear a hat, no one's going to notice.
All right. Well, thank you, John. We're heading on down to about 2 minutes, so thank you for calling. I appreciate it.
I'll see you on the
All right.
radio.
That
Bye-bye.
sounds good. Well, as we have about 2 minutes left, we won't go into a couple of the other areas. It's always nice to leave things for next week. You know, what you should expect from your attorney and listening to your attorney. But let me do very, very quickly. I'll do more of this next week, so let me just do sort of a summation. If you're having a problem on the job, whether it's not getting paid overtime, with discrimination, retaliation for complaining about stuff, whatever it is, don't quit. Don't quit before you call a lawyer. We got a call to our office just this morning where the person said they quit already. If you don't quit before you call the lawyer may be able to give you advice on what type of an email to write to protect the record in the event you have to sue. You know, to make sure that there is a written record so that maybe your quitting becomes a constructive termination and you can collect unemployment and, you know, make the argument that you're entitled to front pay, you know, in court, nothing because you quit. So if you have a problem, call a lawyer first. Don't quit on the spur of the moment because you're angry. It does more to hurt you than you can imagine. And I hear the music. I see the hook coming to get me. So that's it for Ask a Lawyer. I hope you all have a great weekend and a nice week. And I thank the viewers on WSTU for joining us. And I look forward to talking to all of you on WPSL and WSTU every Friday at 10:05. Take care.
You've been listening to Ask a Lawyer right here on WPSL, Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast, and WSTU, Martin County's Heritage Station. WSTU, Stuart. CBS News straight ahead on WPSL, Fox News straight ahead on WSTU.